morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, hello. I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but you are listening to the Portsmouth Proud Podcast. I'm your host, Alexia Washington, the Public Information Officer for P-Town's finest, the Portsmouth, Virginia Police Department. We serve a community that's not too far from the ocean, not too far from the bay, right on the river, and we're producing this podcast for you, for the people of Portsmouth, so that you know what the vision is from the PPD for the city as it pertains to law enforcement, as well as the plan and how you can play a part in it. This is episode 10 of the Portsmouth Proud Podcast, and today we're going to discuss uniformed patrol. We have a wonderful guest, Lieutenant Misty Holley, here with us today. Welcome, Lieutenant Holley.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm excited about this conversation. So before we talk about uniform patrol, I'd like for us to be able to get to know you a little better. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us, where are you from?
Okay, so I was born here in Portsmouth, at Portsmouth Naval.
Okay.
My dad was in the military. My mom and dad, were together, and unfortunately they split up after I was very, very small. I was just about a year old. And we moved from here to Florida, and then we moved to Pennsylvania. So I'm from Philly.
Okay.
I grew up most of my youth was in Philadelphia, in Kensington. So I got to do a lot of great things, from riding the L and the subway to the buses. Third grade, I was walking to school, taking public transportation by the time I was in fifth grade. So it was a really
completely different world
than from here.
Right.
So it's really a really great way. So where I'm from in Philadelphia really kind of translates to some of the individuals that I run into on the street.
Okay.
So being able to, talk with them about my experiences there and them seeing where I'm from, I think sometimes helps with that, that communication, being able to foster that relationship. And it's also really good too because I've had a previous chief who was from Camden, New Jersey.
Okay.
And so that was literally right across the water.
Yes,
and so when he came, it was one of those things, he was saying how they used to go where I used to live.
Right.
And go out and, go to the different places, bars, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, and we would literally talk about some of the stores and some of the things that were on Front Street and stuff like that. And one of the really fun aspects of where I used to live was literally right around the corner from my house was the gym where they filmed the Rocky movies.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Rocky 5. I tell people all the time, I lived right around the corner, and the gym was across the street from Stelio's Pizza, which Stelio's was the bar in Rocky 5.
Yes.
And then the fish store right across the street from that, because that was all on Front Street.
So that's your neighborhood?
It was my neighborhood.
Okay.
The fish store was right next door to my stepfather's video store that he had. So
Did you work in a video store?
I did not. I was younger.
Okay,
so
okay.
I would go and help him, but I didn't do a lot. I mean, I was younger. We had a lot of fun. We used to go play, and so it was just really, really great to be able to see those things and say, I know that fish store. I used to go in there all the time. He had a piranha in the one big tank. I remember those things when I was younger, and then you look at it and you go, wow, I went to that. Wow, that's amazing. So it's just one of those great things that, you get to tell people about that. And when you tell them where you're from and you explain some of the things and they look at you and they go, wow, really? You were right? Did you meet Sylvester Stallone? And you're like, yeah, he was out there.
You did?
You got to as a kid.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't go up to him and go, oh my God, you're Sylvester Stallone, but I saw him.
Yeah.
And you see people and it's just really great.
You had Philly cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what brought you from Philly to Portsmouth?
So my mom is actually from here. She is a Chesapeake. She actually went to Deep Creek.
Okay.
She's one of 10 kids.
Oh.
So my grandparents, my grandfather was from Colorado. He was in the Navy. Moved here.
Got it.
Met my grandmother, who was born in Hopewell, Virginia.
Got it.
But she moved here to this part of Virginia, and they met in Portsmouth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why I applied to the Portsmouth Police Department, because that's where my grandparents met.
Okay, so there are some Portsmouth.
There is
Portsmouth.
Absolutely, Portsmouth vibes, right? All around.
I like it.
And so my mom decided when I was in school that she wanted to be back closer to her family.
Okay.
So my stepfather, her, and me and my two brothers, we moved back down here to Virginia into Chesapeake.
Okay.
So, and then I've spent my entire adult life here. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But I've been in Virginia longer than I was in Philly, but I will tell you the experience of living in Philadelphia growing up as a child into my teen years was just an experience I would never forget and never give up for anything.
Okay. So you moved from Philadelphia to Portsmouth, well, not to Portsmouth, but to this area,
Yes.
the Hampton Roads area. Were very intentional in applying to the Portsmouth Police Department. Yes. What made you want to be a police officer?
So that is super interesting. As a kid, I've always wanted to be one of two things, a police officer or a teacher.
Okay.
I have the utmost respect for teachers. I loved all of my teachers growing up, and they were a huge influence on the person that I became. And so I've always wanted to be a teacher or police officer. And growing up in Philly, we didn't have, so we had our public pools and stuff like that, but our police officers, specifically in Philadelphia, would, especially in the summer, would come up and they would turn on the water from the fire hydrant and allow us to play in it.
Right.
And then the fire department would always come and they would turn it back off. And then you would see the officer would come back around later on and he would turn it back on. And he would stay in the road, like with his car, and block it off so cars wouldn't come down.
Right.
And let the kids have fun and play. So I always thought that was really cool. So loving that, just that neighborhood police officer when I was younger, and then turning around and loving my teachers. I've always said, man, I want to be one of two things. But what really hit it home for me was when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to really connect with an individual who was a Chesapeake police detective, and God rest his soul, he's passed away since then, but his name was Detective Lauer, and he was my school resource officer. So that kind of, got me, leaning more towards the police side. But I was like, he made such an impact. There was something that happened in my high school career where I lost a really good dear friend, and he was able to keep me updated on her case and the things that were going on.
Okay.
And so that impact just, kind of
steered you towards it.
It steered me more towards it. And then I kind of became, after getting out of high school, I was like trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, and that led me to motherhood as a younger adult, in my late teens, early 20s. That led me to my first child, and then my second child. And then I decided, after having a couple different jobs, like I used to work at McDonald's as a teenager, Chuck E. Cheese.
Okay.
So yes, I was
like Chuck E. Cheese.
I did. Yeah, I did everything at Chuck E. Cheese, and then eventually I took some time off when my daughter was born. Came back and they made me a manager.
Okay.
So I managed a Chuck E. Cheese in Chesapeake, and then in Norfolk at Military Circle Mall.
Okay.
That has since closed.
Right.
But they gave me a great opportunity to develop some leadership skills.
Right.
So after doing that, I actually became a dispatcher in the city of Chesapeake. And it wasn't for me, but the guys in Chesapeake, the ladies and gentlemen in dispatch were wonderful. The Chesapeake Police Department was absolutely phenomenal to me. I met a lot of really great people, but that translated into me leaving the Chesapeake Police Department as a dispatcher to become a loss prevention person at JCPenney.
Okay.
So in Chesapeake.
Okay.
Because I felt just like I needed, dispatching wasn't my calling. Like I just couldn't figure out why I wanted to be a police officer so bad, but I couldn't get dispatch just wasn't there.
Right.
So I became a loss prevention supervisor or lead is what we called them at one point at JCPenney, running everything and doing things. And it was at that point, working at JCPenney, that I got an opportunity at Greenbrier Mall to work closely with numerous Chesapeake police officers who work part-time over at the higher end, like the Macy's. Right. So they hired part-time officers, and being able to talk with them and do that, work with them so closely, and they would run after people with me, and the thrill and the excitement, and them telling me, this is what I do on a daily basis, I think that sealed the deal.
That sealed the deal. Okay.
It sealed the deal for me. So I talked it over with my grandmother, because she was the person, and my mom, my mother is very important to me, but my grandmother and my grandfather hold a very special place in my heart. And so I sat down, I was talking to my grandparents one day about it, and my grandmother looked at me, she goes, "So are you going to apply for Chesapeake?" And I was like, "No." I said, I really feel like this calling to apply for Portsmouth. And Portsmouth is the only department I applied for. And she was like, "Why is that?" I was like, "Well, I was born there. You and Paul met each other there."
Aww.
And I remember her telling me stories about Portsmouth and about how she would come to Portsmouth and they would go dancing and all of these great things about Portsmouth and how it was really the place to be back in her youth.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? And then looking at the current trends, the situation with the different cities, looking at the news, basically.
Yeah. Right.
And seeing some of the things that were going on in the different cities. That's what did it for me. I was like, you know what? Yeah, can you do good in Chesapeake? Absolutely. Can you do good in Virginia Beach? Most definitely. But I think I might be able to do the most good in the city of Portsmouth. I felt like that was a city that needed me.
Okay.
So I applied to Portsmouth, and here I am, 18 years later.
18 years later. I like your story. I like how it started from you being a child and having an interaction with the police officer, opening up or unscrewing the fire hydrant, and then you worked your way through different positions, but they all led to law enforcement.
It did.
It took you step by step until you got there. So now, from there, from a child, now you're a lieutenant, and so you're one of the 4 females in leadership in the police department.
Yes.
And so that's partly why I was like, I'm excited to talk to you about that. So, can you tell us what is your role as a lieutenant in uniform patrol?
Yes. So if you don't know anything about uniform patrol, we have 4 platoons. We have 2 day shift, 2 night shift.
Okay.
Each platoon has officers that are assigned to 3 districts. Each platoon has a lieutenant, like me. We call ourselves a shift commander. And they have at least 2 sergeants. And so in my role as a lieutenant, basically, I'm like the overseer. So my sergeants are the ones, boots on the ground, out there with the officers, hitting the street, doing what they need to do. And mine is more of a, overseer / admin role. However, that's not always, I don't know the proper way to put this. It's not always the most satisfying for me.
Okay.
Because really at heart, and I've only been a lieutenant for a year, but I was a sergeant for almost 5 years. And truly the heart of the department, the heart of everything that goes on in this agency revolves around the sergeant.
Okay.
That is where your very first leadership role, your very first formal leadership role takes place. You're able to develop those relationships with your subordinates, your officers. And truly your officers, that is the person that the officers look up to the most. That is who they go to when they have a problem. So for me, deciding to go and move my career forward as a lieutenant was actually a very difficult decision for me because I truly did love my role as a sergeant.
Right.
I just felt like I was out there with them. I was working with them. I was learning who their families were, learning about some issues that may be plaguing them or that they may have problems with and helping them find solutions. To now I've moved up just one more rung on that ladder, and so I've taken a little bit more of a step back, and so it's been a difficult transition, but it's also been, to me, I'm like, as much as I'm supposed to take a step back, it's hard for me to, so I'm still finding myself going. I attend every lineup, listen to what the officers are saying to their supervisors, making sure that I'm getting the information that the chief wants our officers to know, all the information correctly, and making sure that those officers know that information.
Right.
Because I believe knowledge is absolutely power in a sense. I think knowledge is extremely important for all of our officers to know exactly what the chief expects of them, what our assistant chiefs expect, what our captain of uniform patrol expects, what I expect, and what their supervisor expects. Because we can't expect them to do their job, do it effectively, and do it the way that they're supposed to do, and not have us going, why did you do it like that, if they don't know what to expect from us.
Right.
So for me, it's important as a shift commander to make sure that they understand all of that. And so when you look at the role of a shift commander, we're basically in charge of the entire city. And when I say that, the chief is really, he's the overall chief of the agency.
Yes.
But when I say over the city, it's in uniform patrol. So when the calls for service and stuff like that are coming in, the sergeant responds with the officer. They let the shift commander know, which is the lieutenant. And then if that notification needs to go up to the captain's level and higher, we make those notifications.
Right.
So the officer doesn't go directly to the chief and say, hey chief, we have, this just happened, we just had a gunshot wound, or we just had a robbery to a business. That's not the officer's role. That's the role of the supervisor. Just to let the lieutenant know, and then the lieutenant lets the upper chain know. And so, but I feel like as a lieutenant on midnight shift, my role is slightly different from those on days. So when you have a lieutenant on days, except for on the weekend, Monday through Friday, they're here, the chief is here, the assistant chiefs are here, the captains are here, right? So then you have the lieutenants from the other units maybe here. You have our detective bureau who's here. All of our admin people are here. With my role, I come in at 7 o'clock. My officers come in at 7:30 and 8:30 at night. That's the time where most people are at home eating dinner, settling down for bed. I mean, a majority of our citizens and our staff here at the police department are asleep when we're working. So it's a little bit different. And so as a supervisor or as a lieutenant for night shift, we have to change it up a bit, so there's a little bit different role that I play that maybe a day shift supervisor might not. So, the day shift supervisor is responsible for going to different, we may have different events and stuff like that going on, whereas I'm sleeping during the day, so I don't get to go to those events. So the things that we see on days and nights are different. So the notifications might be different, and the way that we respond to some certain things may be different. Especially with my role as a lieutenant, I'm also a CIT instructor and a general instructor.
What is CIT?
Crisis intervention.
Okay.
Yeah, crisis. So we deal with people, our consumers is what we call these individuals who may be in crisis or suffering from a mental illness.
Got it.
And so we work closely with our behavioral health services to try to make sure our officers are trained in the proper way to interact and deal with individuals who are in crisis. So on my platoon specifically, when they're having an issue with someone who they may not be able to get to talk down, to get them to cooperate or anything like that, they usually call me and say, hey, LT, we've tried everything and we just can't. Can you help us out? Okay. So, that's why I say my role is a little bit different, because I'm really open with my officers and my abilities and how I'm here to help. So I don't just look at them and go, hey, I'm the lieutenant. You need to go to the sergeant for every single thing. They should go to the sergeant for almost, most things. But if, like I have, I'm also part of our peer support team. So if an officer is having an issue and they need a peer to talk about it, they'll come to me, and it's not just, lieutenant and officer. It is now Misty and whatever their name is. Okay. So that they feel like they can really talk to me, and then I offer them advice. And I do that also as a lieutenant. When we're our roles, when we're supervising, I offer my officers, advice on, you handled that really well. You could also do this, and stuff like that. But when it comes to my role as a lieutenant, I take it very seriously. I feel like I need to make sure that I know my officers. I need to know their families. I don't, God forbid anything ever happened to one of my officers, I don't want the first time that I learn their wife's name or their children's name to be when they're hurt and I have to make that notification. So I try to get to know my officers, find out who their wives are, who their children are, how they're doing. To this day, I still ask officers who have worked for me previously, hey, how's your daughter doing? Man, I can't believe she's what, like 8 now? And they're like, how do you remember that? And I'm like, it's just because I care that much about my officers. So I feel like that's an important role for me as a leader, to know them.
I think it's important. I did my first ride-along long on the night shift with you, and so while I was sitting there, what is it called when they line up? The lineup. So when I came there, I was observing, and you can really tell that you have strong relationships with those who you lead, who you supervise. I think some of that desire that you had to be a teacher clearly comes out in the way that you talk to them and you explain things. I watched you, I can't remember exactly what you were explaining, but I just remember the dynamics of that conversation, and it definitely was a nurturing teacher instructor vibe to the way that you were communicating with them. And I think that's important because, like you were saying earlier, if you don't have direction and then know exactly what you need to do, then you're not going to feel confident to do what you need to do.
And I think
so that's important.
It's absolutely, leaders, it's important for me to know what the desire of my officers are and my sergeants. So I don't want to leave my sergeants out. So I will tell you, I work with a very young group of officers. Half of my group have just been cut loose recently, but these officers, and I've got a diverse group too. So that is one of the things that I'm super excited about when I work on Midnights, is that not only do I have a diverse group of, so half my officers have been here for probably 3 years or more. The other have just been cut loose within the last year or so, but if you look at the dynamics of my group and you see, the ages vary. Their life experiences vary. Some have military, some don't. So they're from different backgrounds, I only have, right now I think I have 3 females on the group now because we just got a new one. But I have two Spanish-speaking officers on my group that I didn't have before.
That's nice.
So it's amazing to be able to have those, and one is male and one is female.
Okay.
So it's, and then it's just, you have the short ones like me. I'm short. And then you have my super
really tall officers.
Right? You have the really tall officers, and then I have some officers who can run really fast, and their endurance, I'm amazed. I'm like, you really ran from there to there. I think you got out the car too soon. And we have those conversations and we laugh about it. But it's just, every day I learn something from someone on my group, and I don't tell them this all the time, and they're probably going to hear this and laugh at me, but I really truly believe if we're not learning something every day, then we're not living up to our full potential. And so even if it's not something that I learn personally on my own, when I work with this group of individuals, I learn something from one of them, if not many of them, on a daily basis. They are a great group of individuals who are very tight-knit. So this group, they welcome new members in, and they do things off-duty. We do things as a platoon, maybe once or twice a year. Because as a leader, you have to keep a certain amount of distance. But we do things like at Christmas or something like that as a platoon. I will frequently bring in, and everyone's going to laugh, but I'll bring in donuts for them, or we'll get pizza. We celebrate their birthdays. One of my sergeants brings in cakes, or I'll bring in cupcakes.
Oh, that's nice.
Or if you've ever had the nothing bundt cakes, we call those the bougie cupcakes. So I'll bring those in.
They do add a little bougie.
They do. They do. And and it's great. So I went out on I had a surgery earlier this year, and so when I came back, I have been doing so many different things for my platoon that when I came back, my platoon knows I like nothing bundt cakes. So they actually, the day I came back, they brought in nothing bundt cakes. And I was like, y'all did not have to do that. They're like, we missed you.
That's nice.
And that feeling of being missed and having my officers text me, and my sergeants, of course, too, because I've had some great sergeants that I've worked with, text me and ask me how I'm doing, says a lot about the relationship that we have. And so I, as a leader, want to make sure that I don't fail them. So asking them, hey, what are your career goals? Where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? When I see someone who has a specific gift, I'll recommend, hey, you know what? For instance, I have an officer who, he has previous experience as a deputy, but I noticed with his report writing and some of the things that he does, he's very detail-oriented, very, he's so good at writing reports for a new officer, writing the little details and documenting. I was like, I'm going to put you in for FET school. I didn't ask him. And so I said, I think he needs to go to FET school because I think he has the makings of a detective.
Okay. Can you say what is FET school?
So FET is our Field Evidence Technician school. So I'm like, he has the makings to be a detective. He's really good at talking with people, can get people to confess to stuff. His documentation skills are really good. Like, I'm seeing these things because I used to be a detective.
Okay.
So I'm seeing these little things. I'm like, I'm going to put him through the FET school. Didn't ask him. So when the sergeant told him that he was going to go, he was like, oh man, I really don't want to go to that school. And so the sergeant was like, well, it wasn't my choice to send you, it was the lieutenant's. The lieutenant wants you to attend. He goes, well, I mean, if the lieutenant wants me to do it, I'll do it. So that's just
relationship.
That's that relationship building. But what I'm trying to do is steer him in a way that I know he hasn't quite figured it out himself yet.
Right.
But I'm steering him along that way. And when I was in community policing before I became a lieutenant, I did the same thing to one of our current traffic officers, Officer Long. And he's going to probably laugh at me because I said that, but Dave Long is an amazing individual.
I hear about him all the time.
I learned a lot from him as a new officer because he was here as a school resource officer when I first came on.
Okay.
So I learned a lot from him and working with him, going to his games and just listening to him. And then when he came back, being able to work with him in community policing, and he has so much experience, and I've learned so much from the officers that I've worked with throughout my career as an officer, detective, supervisor. But Dave Long, and he was in community policing with me, and he was doing all of our traffic. I'm not going to lie, this guy is, he's just great at traffic stops, and he's great at everything that he does, really. And so I told him he put in for traffic, and I was like, let's put you in for this school. He goes, Sarge, I really don't want to do that, because I was a sergeant at the time. Sarge, I don't know why you keep putting me in for it. And I was like, come on, Dave, put him in for this school, put him in for this. And he's like, man, I don't know why you keep doing that. I'm not going to traffic. Oh, look at where he's at.
Right.
And I told him, I was like, see, I have a method to my madness, sir. I see something in you that I know you're going to need certain things, but I learned so much from him, being a sergeant. So, and working with him and working with all of the community policing officers there, Officer Henderson and Officer Porter, and I can't forget Auxiliary Officer Barnes. I feel like my role in community policing and what I was doing in community policing just before I got promoted solidified my rise up to lieutenant, and Miss Donna Jordan too, who was one of my civilians, and Mr. Bamberg. Just being able to work with them and being able to do the things that I did with them really just solidified that, as much as I love being a sergeant, I need to take that next step. I need to be a lieutenant, because now I think as in my role as lieutenant, I feel like I can do just that little bit more for those sergeants and my officers that I lead. So that's just in a nutshell.
Can you tell us, what is uniform patrol?
Yes. So uniform patrol, absolutely. It is, again, we have 4 platoons. There are 3 groups, or districts, as we call them, District 1, 2, and 3. District 1 is everything on the south side of 264. So you'll have like Cavalier Manor, Craddock, you'll have Newport, Bidawee, Prentice Park, Prentice Place, Dale Holmes, all of those underlying neighborhoods, Truxton, Highland Biltmore, Loxley. So you have all of those neighborhoods. And then on the north side of 264 are your areas like Parkview, West Parkview, Shea Terrace. You'll have Port Norfolk, Waterview. You have the Midtown Business District, where the Walmart, the Frederick Boulevard Walmart, and then you have Kroger and all of those.
That's District 2.
Yes, that is all District 2. And then, of course, District 3, when you cross the bridge over into Churchland is all of District 3.
Okay.
So for each platoon, they have officers assigned to each one of those districts.
Okay.
And there's 1 lieutenant and 2 sergeants. So you have officers that are assigned to each one of those districts, and when they work, they always work the same beat. And one of the reasons why we do that is so that they know their area. So they know their neighbors, or the neighbors in the area, the citizens. They know the players of someone who may be doing things that they shouldn't be, committing criminal acts, or on their way to committing those acts. So it just gives them the opportunity to, because they're in that district and in that particular beat every night, they are able to connect better with the community in that area. So that is the idea behind it, because quite frankly, and the Chief Jenkins has said this numerous times, and we try to tell our officers, it's not just community policing or community enhancement division that should be community officers.
Right.
Every single officer on this department is responsible for interacting with the community in a positive way and being community officers.
Right.
It is our responsibility as a whole. Our patch says Portsmouth. It doesn't say North Side. It doesn't say South Side. And it doesn't say Churchland.
Right.
So we go all over the city, but we are supposed to make those connections in our district and in our beat assignment that we're assigned to.
That was discussed maybe 2 weeks ago. I was sitting down for the podcast with Assistant Chief Prince, and he was talking about that what you're describing is what actual community-oriented policing is. It's
Yes.
not just community enhancement or certain divisions. It's all the police officers
Absolutely
working that
it is. Because there is, and I know people have seen the TikTok videos and the Facebook videos of officers just pulling up, and there's one in particular I remember definitely, because I've done this myself as a uniform patrol officer, where you get a call for service of kids playing basketball in the street.
Yeah.
And the officer pulls up, and instead of yelling at them and telling you can't be in the road, he starts playing basketball with them.
Right.
Now that's important. Now we don't want to block traffic and
Right.
get people mad if they can't get to their homes. But you know what? Just taking that 10 minutes, and it may inconvenience someone, and I apologize if it does, but taking that 10 minutes to connect with those kids, that 10 minutes my SRO connected with me for the very first time, that got me hooked.
Right.
And it kept me from doing things that other kids my age were doing.
Right.
So making that connection with our youth that early on can definitely make a difference in their role as they grow older. I was an SRO for Craddock for 1 year, Craddock and Waters. And to this day, I still talk to some of my students who said that I made a difference in their lives. And it makes me happy to see that. You don't get a better feeling than knowing that you made a difference and that you helped someone along the way. And I've just came into contact with someone recently who I did that for before I even became a cop. So it's one of those things, it's like it's in the making type of thing. And when you listen to someone talk about you, I'm not one of those ones who likes people to talk about me about any great thing that I may or may not have done. And I get embarrassed, I turn red, but I love to talk great things about my officers. So how awesome it makes me feel to talk that great about my officers, if my officers feel that great, too,
Right.
it makes me feel great. And I want my officers to make those connections, because truly knowing that you help someone, there's no better feeling knowing going home, and you may have had a bad day, but going home, sometimes I'll go, you know what, today might not have been a great day, but the other day I did this, and it just keeps you going. It keeps you wanting to do this job every day.
That's great. I think this is a good time for us to take our first community break, and when we return, we'll continue talking with Lieutenant Holley about uniform patrol and some of the challenges she faces in her daily duties.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
National Night Out will be here before you know it, so mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, and join us at Festival Park for the ultimate community gathering. That's August 6th from 3 to 8 p.m. at Festival Park. See you at National Night Out. back from our break, and we've been having a wonderful discussion with Lieutenant Holley. She is the lieutenant over 3rd Platoon in Uniform Patrol, and we've been discussing like how she became a police officer, her career path to becoming lieutenant, and just some of the joys of policing. And now we're going to just steer the conversation in a different direction, and I would have liked to talk about how you said nights are a little bit different. So how does working at night impact you being able to coordinate with coordination and communication within the patrol unit? Because like you said, a lot of people aren't here at night. So how does that work?
So let me, just to be quite frank and honest, so I tell people all the time that working days and working nights is literally days and nights. So from an officer safety standpoint, working nights, and I'm not saying that working days isn't dangerous for an officer in any situation, but if you look at what you can see during the daytime versus what you can see at night, there's a significant difference. So officers who work nights, the officer safety is a little bit different. Where I could see all the way down to the corner down there, who might be standing down there, you may not be able to see that far down at night, depending on the lighting and where you are. And sometimes street lights go out, so the streets are different, they're darker. And so officers have to be really super alert. One of the things that we don't have a luxury of being on nights that our counterparts on days, especially Monday through Friday when there's no holidays, is that if we were to have a big incident, say a super huge scene that occurs, and I don't have enough officers to hold that scene and answer calls for service, whereas day shift can call in some of our detectives or some of the other administrative officers who are working Monday through Friday. We don't have that luxury at night, generally speaking. However, one of the things that we do have, especially on our weekends more than anything else, is the ability to make contact with officers who may be working part-time and pull them off part-time, but that's not always the case, if that makes sense. So there are challenges when we have a super huge scene, balancing out, making sure that we have enough officers to secure that scene, but also have those officers to respond to those calls for service. Because just because we have this scene over here doesn't mean that those calls for service and people calling that need us stop. So they keep coming. So we've got to be able to have that balance and be able to say, okay, we only need to use this many officers here. We need to have these officers answering those calls that are still coming in.
So, because right now, as you're talking, I'm thinking of like a chaotic scene. So, how do you personally handle that type of stress or high pressure situation?
So one of the things that I learned, actually learned from a couple of people in this department, whenever you're involved in a traumatic incident, there's officers on this department who have been through something similar, right? So when you've been through something, any one of our officers, and you connect with other officers who have been through those same or similar incidences, you guys talk about things that you can do to de-stress and kind of calm yourself. So one of the most wonderful things that I ever learned, and it's as simple as just breathe. Breathe. You will see, if you ever look at my body camera footage, when I go to a scene, any officer, when we have especially like a priority 1 or priority 2 where there could be some type of injury, potential loss of property, anything like that, in progress calls, when you go, you get excited. And it's not excited that, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody's finally breaking into a house type of excited. You're just like, I can't wait to get there, and make sure that nobody does anything and this person doesn't lose this. I want to capture the person before they were able to steal something. So you get that excitement, and we get it as a brand new officer, and even me being on 18 years, I still do get that adrenaline rush. And you're like, oh yeah, let's go. But as you're going, you're getting what we call tunnel vision, so you get laser focused on exactly where, like, I gotta get there safely, of course. Get there, and when I was in field training, my field training officers would teach me, all right, you're going to a domestic assault in progress. Think about what might be happening. Does somebody have a weapon? You know, where are they? Are they still on scene? You know, is the victim injured? And okay, what happens if this person does this or this person does that?
Right.
So in field training, they're teaching you to do all that. So that you get pre-wired by the time you get cut loose to start thinking of all of those things in your head as you're going to these calls for service. So as you go, you're like, okay, well, what if I encounter this? I'll do this. You know, so you want to prepare yourself, because you have to make those split-second decisions. So if you prepare yourself right, you're more inclined to be able to make the right decision than if you're not prepared.
Right. So using that drive to think through all the scenarios.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So then when you get there, you're like, now you got all this energy and all of this, your mind is going, you're racing, and we run in and we do A, B, and C, and we're like, oh. So what I do is I developed this plan where I'm going, okay, instead of racing, okay, I know I'm going to this, all right, this is what could happen, all right, I'm good, all right, breathe, try to control my breathing instead of getting, because when I first got cut loose, I was like, heck yeah, let's go, and bounce in my seat, right?
Right.
So now I don't bounce in my seat anymore, all right? Okay. You know, I've grown up from the bouncing in the seat.
Okay.
Yep. Not a toddler anymore. So when I get there, I put my car in park. When I put my car in park, I take a deep breath in. As I'm getting out of my car, I take a deep breath out.
Okay.
Clear my head.
So you have a car exiting ritual.
I do.
Before you go. Okay.
And what that does, it calms me. So I've gone to scenes where my officer's like, how are you always so calm? I'm like, I take a deep breath in and release. And believe it or not, that moment where you take in that deep breath, right? A lot of people don't realize it clears your mind.
Yeah.
So now you have a clear mind to think more clearly. You don't have that tunnel vision anymore.
Okay.
So now instead of having the tunnel vision, you now have a clear mind, and now instead of just seeing this little cone in front of you, you see
everything
more.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's just something that I do personally, you know, and it's at work. I'll sometimes be at my desk if I'm working on admin stuff, and I will be like, you know what? I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna walk around, and then I'm gonna come back to my seat, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to breathe. So when I do my walks, I walk around downtown and I check, you know, doors and stuff like that, make sure we didn't accidentally leave a door open. It is nighttime. You don't want any, you know, you don't want people that you don't know being in there, but, you know, we do have snakes and, you know, mice and all kinds of other things that, you know, go on.
Non-humans that might come into
Right.
Yes.
So, you know, it's one of those things, so we make sure that we aren't letting in things that we may need to call animal control to remove. And so I'll walk around and I'll, you know, if the magistrate's there, I'll wave at the magistrate. If my officers are down in the report writing room doing something, I'll touch base with them, see if there's anything that they need help with or anything like that. And then I'll talk to our records unit techs.
Okay.
And say, hey, how's it going? How are you doing?
So they're there at night?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So our records are 24/7.
Got it.
So we have somebody down there. And if there's anybody else that might be downtown, I'll say hi to them. Sometimes we'll have a part-time officer come in and they may be checking their folder or whatever. And so I'll say, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? And so that's what I do. And then I go back up to my office. And before I start my work, I'll take my deep breath in and deep breath out.
Okay.
It's important to breathe, right?
Well, yes.
Very important to breathe, right?
Yes.
Deep breath in, deep breath out.
So what brings a lieutenant to the scene at night? Because all scenes wouldn't require you to be there.
Correct.
So what has to be occurring in order for you to go to a scene?
So it's going to be a serious incident.
Okay.
Generally speaking, we go to the serious incidents. So like if you have a gunshot wound or possibly even a robbery to a business, maybe if our day shift officers, our day shift supervisors will go to if there's ever an active shooter anywhere.
Okay.
And we would too. You're not going to get active shooters much on night shift as you would possibly a day shift. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but those types of situations, anything that would require any type of notification, say we have a missing child, or maybe even a missing adult who may be compromised with like Alzheimer's or dementia, or someone with mental illness, or someone who is suicidal.
You would go to...
I would go to those scenes.
Okay.
And as a shift commander, get the information, find out what's going on, making sure that the sergeant has everything that they need to conduct their search initially and stuff like that. They're making the notifications to our criminal investigations to call out like our special victims unit. But then if it's something that requires notification up to like the chief or anything like that, that is something that I would make that notification up the chain of command.
Okay. A few weeks ago, I was talking with some detectives, and they had mentioned that the role of the police officer, you all are you have to understand the law.
Right.
Know what the law is as you're engaging with citizens. I never thought about it from that perspective until having that conversation with them. So how do you, as a police officer, how do you stay up to date with new laws and regulations? Because I would imagine, like, if you've been here for 18 years, what was legal in 2010 is not necessarily legal in 2024, but it could have changed between 2010 in October and 2011 January. How do you stay up to date on that?
So one of the things that I tell my officers too is, so for me personally, being on this agency for the 18 years I have, we've always had someone on our agency that has been able to guide us on like updated legals. Okay. So I have a question about something. When you have a good rapport with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, you could just call one of the attorneys, and ask them for clarification on something, especially if you run into something and then say you take it to court and it gets dismissed, and the judge says, well, I'm dismissing it because of A, B, and C. You just talk to the hey, okay, we did this wrong. Tell me what we should have done. So you have those conversations. And I read articles, periodicals, so I'm a member of IACP.
Okay.
So a lot of stuff will come down through IACP. They'll send out emails. They send out their monthly magazine that they send out. I'm also a PBA and FOP member. So as a member of those organizations, they send out information. But one of the things that I did myself personally, after having an experience where I felt like a law was violated, I decided, you know what? Maybe I don't have as good a grasp on certain things as I felt like I should have had.
Okay.
I'm going to go get my master's degree. So I have a Juris Master's in American Legal Studies. Okay. So I was like, and let me tell you, I did. I wanted to know more about the law, how to interpret the law, because sometimes when I would talk to a Commonwealth, I was like, no, you're wrong. That's wrong. Because again, when I look at the law, like when I look at like what a domestic assault is, and if I'm like, no, that is absolutely this, and they're like, no, it's not, and I'm like, oh, or I'll have an attorney when I'm testifying and they'll make an argument. I'm like, why are you making that argument? That's stupid. That's silly. Like, in my mind, why are they making that argument? That's stupid. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I just don't know. Like, I always thought to myself, maybe I just don't know. So after I got my bachelor's degree, I decided I was, get my master's. And I will tell you this, after getting my master's degree in American Legal Studies, and lawyers go through a heck of a lot of work to become a lawyer and to do what they want to do. I am absolutely amazed at the level of just studying. I mean, I literally felt like my brain was mush after the little bit of time I did doing my master's degree, because the law, the interpretation, it's so wide open. Like, where I may make an argument for this after reading something, my classmate makes a different argument. I'm like, how'd you get that out of that? Or they might say something,
right.
I'm like, man, I never even thought of it like that.
Right.
So now going back and looking, when I sat in court and, like, why is he making that argument? Now I'm like, now I understand why he made that argument or why she made that argument. So it gave me a better understanding of the law and the interpretation portion of the law, like interpreting the law from various different aspects. And it also gave me, I feel a little, you know what? I respect y'all for what y'all do, because absolutely, on top of, and I wasn't even getting my, Juris Doctorate, which is what you have to have to get a law degree to be a lawyer. Right. I was like, bless you. You know what? you worked really hard for that. I will never ever say, why did you make that argument again?
Right. Okay.
Because there's a rhyme or a reason behind it.
There's a reason why they, yes.
And recently, being able to use my law, the Juris Masters that I got, talking about a burglary. And so my officers are, we were talking about simply what a burglary versus a home invasion is. So we were getting more into the burglary aspect after we talked about the home invasion aspect. And they were like, well, if they do this, it's only an attempt. And I was like, well, no. And then I explained to them because I actually did a paper. Kind of
Don't
funny.
you like when you can rely back on
absolutely
according to my research?
Right. I did a paper where I had 4 different cases of what Virginia defines as a break, because you have to have a breaking and an entering to have a burglary. So, and my officers only see breaking and entering, so in their mind they're thinking breaking like you're breaking something like a window or kicking in a door, and the entering is when the physical body, the entire body goes in, like that's what they're thinking. And so when I laid it out for them and gave them the case law in reference to what the definition of a breaking is under case law, and recent case law, not even like back in the 60s and 70s, like recent case law that they can look at, what defines a breaking, what defines an entering. They're like, so if I go up to my ex-girlfriend's house and I punch in the window of the side view of the door and reach in and try to unlock the door, but I can't get it unlocked, that's a breaking and entering? I was like, yes, because your arm literally went through the window. Right. So you entered. He goes, but my body didn't enter. I was like, but you don't have to have it's any part of the body. Right. So explaining that to them, and that goes back to that whole having that, that dynamic with your officers and being able to explain it. So now they have a better understanding of what a burglary is and what a breaking and entering is, and so hopefully that will help them in the future as they go through and maybe become a detective or become a supervisor, being able to pass along that knowledge to future officers. So
I think that is just it's a blessing to be an officer under someone who has that perspective, has that experience, has that knowledge, because that is going to make you more effective at your job. Yes. So that's great. But I think this is a good place to take our final break, and when we return, we're going to hear some final words from Lieutenant Holley.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
National Night Out will be here before you know it, so mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, and join us at Festival Park for the ultimate community gathering. That's August 6th from 3 to 8 p.m. at Festival Park. See you at National Night Out. So we're back with Lieutenant Holley. We've had a good conversation about her career in uniform patrol, but her career as a lieutenant and just being a police officer overall. I want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone considering a career in law enforcement?
Wow, that's a great question. And, I could tell you so many great stories about the things that we've done in law enforcement, how far we've come. From the time that I came on in 2006 until now, policing has changed drastically. And I imagine from 25, 30 years ago, it's changed completely different. I'm a go with the flow type of person. I'm a Gen Xer, so we learned, we were the kids that went outside and played till it was dark, and we were the latchkey kids, and so we were the kids who were told, don't speak unless spoken to. So, it's one of those things I learned young as a child, just to kind of go with the flow. If an adult tells you to do this, or your boss tells you to do this, you do it, right? So I'm a very go with the flow type of person. So as I transitioned from being an officer starting in 2006 until now, with every change that law enforcement has undertaken, it's been, for me, has been fairly easier than it has been for some of your more, I don't want to say stubborn, but like for officers in general, because officers don't like change.
Right.
Which is weird, because every day we go to calls for service that could change in a second. But when it comes to how we do things,
you want it to
we always did it that way.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing it this way anymore? So if you're one of those individuals who wants to make a difference in your community, doesn't mind changes that could occur, wants to get into a profession that not only gives you such joy of doing, but also helps you connect with the community in a way that you really probably wouldn't have in any other position. I mean, so when I say that, like, so we have firefighters that are public safety, and they're great, and they do a lot of community outreach. Right. They have to work a little bit harder at community outreach than we do. And I say that because, so you have a medic who responds for a sick person, they're responding to take them to the hospital and to make sure they are good. They're not just going out to go play basketball with them.
Right.
Firefighters, they're coming to your house because your house is on fire.
Right.
They don't have a chance to stop and say, hey, by the way, I know your house is on fire, but we'll get to that in a second. Hey, what do you like to do for, fun? So they have to work extra hard at it. For law enforcement, we're able to connect in a way that while we're on a call for service. And when we connect with that individual, we can do different things with them and say different things to them and be able to inform them of different things that are going on in our agency. Mm-hmm. So for instance, right now, we're coming up on National Night Out, right?
Yes.
August 6th.
August 6th.
So it's just a couple of weeks away, right? So my officers and I, like when we're out here right now, if we respond to a call for service or meet someone in Wawa, hey, you should come to National Night Out, Festival Park, from 3 to 8 p.m., August 6th is a Tuesday. It's just a couple weeks away.
Right.
Portsmouth has the best National Night Out. We've been ranked nationally for the last 2 years. We've just had a really great time. Free cotton candy, free snow cones, free popcorn, dunk tank. We have so much great stuff going on. You should really come out and join us.
Yes.
And so they get super excited about that. And it's just being able to connect with people in a way that you normally wouldn't. I'm doing some CIT training this week, which is the Crisis Intervention.
Right.
And I happened to go to the Dollar Tree with another officer so we could pick up some things for what we were doing. And it was during lunch. And someone said, hey, why do you have all that candy? You have a sweet tooth? And I was like, no, we're using it for our CIT training. He goes, what is CIT? And as I'm explaining to him what CIT is and what we're doing and why our officers are being trained, the people in the line behind him, they're all like intently listening.
Right.
And looking at me, and they're asking questions. And so it's like being able to just, out of a simple conversation of someone saying, why do you have that candy?
Yes.
And being able to explain, and then not only just to him, but 4 or 5 people behind him.
Right.
And then for them to go, that is awesome that the police department is doing that. We are able to let our citizens know about different programs and about different things we're doing that that the fire department doesn't have that luxury of doing.
Right.
So it's just a unique relationship, and it's a unique profession that you're able to do. You just feel good after you've done it every day. You've made a difference in somebody's lives. You're connecting with officers and helping to mentor them.
Right.
You're connecting with the citizens and being able to let them know the different things that are going on. And you're even building relationships within the city. I can't tell you how many people Nicole over at the pavilion, she runs the pavilion over there from Parks and Rec, and every time I see her, we got to get our hug in, and a lot of the guys that work over there, because I've worked closely with them doing National Night Out and other events, and working with Renee and Mark Palmachuk in Parks and Rec.
Right.
I mean, and Cliff, sales, and GI, you make all of these connections with people in the city, and then when someone like in our neighborhood quality, like I have a citizen who goes, well, this is going on, who do I contact?
You know
what?
Contact.
You call this person.
Yes.
Or you call this entity, and I give them that number. And it's just being able to do that for our citizens, take that extra step, and just, again, overall, being in law enforcement, it just gives me a thrill every day to be able to come to work, be able to work with people and meet people. And I was raised Southern Baptist, so my beliefs, my religious beliefs, kind of correlate with why I want to be a law enforcement officer, because, God wants us to go out and do good things. He wants us to help people. He wants us to make a difference, and that's how we're doing that. And so if I'm able to do that on a personal level, and be able to go out there, I've made connections with the faith-based community based on my community policing that I still talk to, many pastors, and it's just great to be able to see them outside of work, but just to let them see inside of me the things that I've been blessed by God with, that I have a home, that I have this, that I have that I'm able to take a little extra money and help someone who may not have a meal. Just being able to do those things, knowing that I'll be blessed now and when I'm gone. So, and quite honestly, if we do a great job, a lot of people want to be known. In a department, officers a lot of times tell me, I want everybody to, say, Officer so-and-so was great because he did A, B, and C, and that's why I go out there and I bust my butt every day. I said, well, you should be out there busting your butt every day, not for just that, but for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of, other people. I was like, because what you do in this agency, people are going to recognize that.
Right.
They may not tell you that they do. I was like, so if you're trying to do things to try to build a legacy, you're better off doing things not worried about building that legacy, because as you do these things and as people see you do these things, they see that and they go, you remember when Lieutenant Holley did blah, 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 blah? And I may not remember that I did it.
Right.
But you build a legacy all your own just by doing good works.
Right.
And I remember a lieutenant who made a very huge impact on me as a leader, and it wasn't because he went out and arrested every single person out there on the street. It was because of the things that he did. So if you truly want a good legacy in this agency, you need to do good work, not worried about getting a bunch of accolades. You need to do good work and make a difference in the community, because law enforcement has been one of the most rewarding, fulfilling jobs I've ever had, and I'm so glad that I had that officer in Philadelphia who used to open up the fire or the fire hydrant for us, had that detective who was my SRO, and to all of those wonderful Chesapeake police officers who I worked with when I was a loss prevention, that just kind of guided me and solidified my career in law enforcement.
I can see the passion and excitement on your face. And earlier you had mentioned about, uniform patrol leading the city. And you really do, because you're ambassadors. You're the face of the city, really. You're the people that are uniform patrol officers are out there day and night.
Yes. Talking
to the people, giving out resources, helping when they need help or when they just need to talk. So it's important work that you do, and I'm kind of cheesing because I'm seeing your face, your excitement about what you do. But I think this has been a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Just the way you've been talking about the passion you're talking about law enforcement, but just seeing how you work with your officers and then hearing the why behind it. It's a rewarding conversation for me.
It is.
So I would just say thank you so much for...
Thank you for having me. It's been great. This is new for us, so it's great having someone like you in a PIO role who is, bringing these things to the forefront for us. I mean, we really need to get a message out there to our community how much we really do care and how much we really do want to make a difference. And for our officers too, you know, sometimes our officers forget, I'm not saying that any of the other platoons aren't awesome. I love my guys. My guys are amazing. I would love working with my counterparts on day shift. They're all awesome. And then our counterparts on the opposite shifts. We do a great job, and it's good for our community to hear about all the wonderful things that we do. But it's also good to have someone who's willing to put out all of that good stuff for us. And so I thank you. You're doing a great job, and I know that job's not easy. I've been in that role before.
I don't know what to say other than thank you. And I want to say thank you for listening, and to remember that this is your city, this is our city, so let's work together to make it great.